Okay, welcome to Lagging History on YouTube. This is going to be a tutorial on the political weaknesses of the Weimar Republic. This is something that some students really struggle with. However, it's actually quite easy to actually understand whenever we break it down. I'm going to break this down into three. We're going to have firstly the constitutional weaknesses of the Weimar Republic. This is something many of us understand and understand very well. So we're going to do that to start with, and then we're going to move on to left-wing challenges. So obviously Weimar had an awful lot of left-wing challenges, especially at the very beginning when it set up in 1919. And then the opposite of that is right-wing challenges to political power in Weimar. So we're going to try to look at all three of these and just show you how easy it is to get your marks. So if we look at constitutional weaknesses to begin with, there should be in your head a number of different points already coming in about where those weaknesses lie. So it had a number of constitutional weaknesses from the very beginning. The Weimar Constitution that they set up had an awful lot of freedoms, perhaps the most free society in the world, democratically. It had an awful lot of freedoms, but those freedoms had issues too. The first thing to point out was the PR voting system. It allowed for an awful lot of choice. It gave choices to a number of different parties that you could actually vote for. But this led to too many parties, and too many parties makes a problem for actually forming a stable government, and this is what happened at the time. It led to very weak coalition governments that would struggle to deal with the crises facing Germany. And if you think about it, Germany faced a lot of crises in 1919 on the back of World War I, on the back of surrender, and on the back of all those challenges from left and right wing groups. Coalition basically means a government of two or more parties coming together, and Germany had a number of these here all the way through the Weimar Republic years. Okay, so next, this voting system also allowed for the representation of a lot more extreme minority parties to be represented, because it gave them an opportunity to be elected to the Reichstag. This also allowed them the chance to actually get involved in more mainstream politics, because often there was no clear majority in an election, so the big parties like the Social Democrats, they had to actually sort of sign up with other parties, make deals with them to get into government. So potentially extreme parties could actually have a voice. So that was a big issue. Okay, next we have the Bill of Rights. So Bill of Rights obviously very important. It allowed freedoms, but at that stage it allowed those who were opposed to democracy to really flourish at a point when it was just getting off the ground. Remember, Germany was used to being ruled by a strong man, a Kaiser. It was an autocracy for years. They're not used to democracy. To have people who are openly opposed from the very beginning sort of threatens to strangle it at birth. Then you have those Article 48 powers open to the President. These are decree powers. An emergency President can suspend the Reichstag and rule without it. This was fine in the right hands, obviously. The likes of Ebert, Social Democrat President, this was fine. However, if you can imagine, it can also be misused to suspend democracy and suspend the Reichstag and making laws is quite a big thing whenever you take into account someone like Hitler later on. Okay, so it could be misused. And finally, the German federal structure split up power between states, or Länder. These states could potentially be taken over by more extreme parties and begin to challenge the centre. You had, for example, the Weimar Republic in Bavaria, where an attempted communist takeover. You also have Hitler trying to take over in 1923 in the Munich Beer Hall Rising. That potentially could threaten Germany as a whole from Berlin. Okay, so that's the federal states there. You can see all of them there. So each has its own powers, and big states like Bavaria or Prussia could easily influence the whole country as a whole. So left-wing challenges then. So first of all, you know that Weimar immediately faced challenges from the left wing. The reasons being that Russia wasn't a too distant neighbour from Germany itself. If you go through Poland, you're right into Russia after that, or Ukraine would be the Soviet Union, and into that stage. It became communist in 1917. Russia, and this idea of communism was very easily exportable. In fact, it was designed to be exported to other countries, and that's what the Soviet Union wanted. So Germany felt very threatened, especially the middle class. The middle class feared what they called the red virus, that it would really threaten their businesses, their homes, and their religion. And this fear almost became, well, it was greater than the actual threat. Communism really didn't have very much of hope in Germany, but the fear of it was really used and misused by right-wing powers as well in Germany. Okay, so next, the Weimar democracy itself was forced to depend on right-wing forces. The left-wing challenges themselves, like the Spartacists, wasn't a very significant challenge to Weimar democracy. However, what was a serious issue was that the new Social Democrats in charge of the government, the new democracy really depended on the Freikorps militias. These are right-wing, extreme right-wing militias straight from the war, who are utterly opposed to communism, but also to democracy. And the Ebert-Gunner Agreement in November 1918 sort of sealed its fate in a lot of ways, because it really did allow the Weimar democracy to depend wholly on right-wing forces and the army to try to deal with the communist threat. And the right-wing challenges themselves were perhaps as great. Remember, many on the right actually, they harked back to the Kaiser. They wanted the Kaiser to return. The Kaiser was only across the border in Holland, and many of them really wanted a return to that sort of the Kaiser's autocracy, that strong Germany from before. And there was a real strong belief in this stab in the back myth. I mean, Weimar democracy was immediately made to make sort of very tough decisions, the decisions to end the war, the decisions to sign the Versailles Treaty. The generals at the end of the war knew this here, and they didn't believe in democracy themselves, and they knew that the new democracy would be undermined from the very beginning. So it was. The Democrats lacked full support of what we call the Wilhelmine establishment as well. That's the judiciary, the army, and the civil service. They wanted to return to the Kaiser as well, and subtly they worked against democracy in many ways. The judiciary, for example, it gave subtle support to the right wing because there was a number of assassinations going on throughout the 1920s, early 1920s, up to 300. One of those was Walter Rathenau, who was assassinated. He was a very famous politician. Whenever they went up for trial, those right-wing assassins, they were given very lenient sentences. Hitler also would later benefit from this himself, by being given sort of 9 months in jail in the end. So this undermined democracy itself. And finally, the Weimar democracy was also crucially over-reliant on the army and the Freikorps militias. And we can see this by the Kapp Putsch. The Kapp Putsch, they asked the army to intervene, and the von Sicht, the guy in charge of the army, said the army does not fire on the army. It was very clear where their allegiances lay. It wasn't with democracy, it was with military force. This defeat of the Kapp Putsch by strike was very important. It appeared to be a victory for Weimar democracy. It wasn't really at all. It really showed how weak democracy was, and really you can see that in the elections which followed. I think the coalition government had up to 75% support from the public from before 1920, before the Kapp Putsch. Afterwards, that there fell to 45%, and obviously people's trust in the Weimar democracy was failing. I hope this makes sense. It's quite a technical topic, but if you divide it into these three sections, you can't really go wrong. Okay, thank you.